Join me, your host, the Professor of Transition, Bob Durst, on People in Transition as we welcome Walter Sabrin, Chief Talent Officer at Vensure Employer Solutions. Walter's career has been dedicated to putting people first, whether it's scaling talent strategies across Vensure, Salvo, and HireFinder, championing neurodiversity, or mentoring the next generation of leaders. But Walter's story isn't just about business. It started on the tennis court, where discipline, agility, and resilience shaped the leadership style he brings into the boardroom today. His unique perspective blends athletic grit with a passion for building cultures where people thrive. In this episode, we'll dive into how job seekers can stand out, what hiring managers really look for, and why belonging and authenticity are more important than ever in today's workplace. If you're looking for strategies, insights, and maybe even some inspiration, you won't want to miss this conversation with Walter. Good morning, Walter.
Hey, Bob, good morning. Thanks for the invite, and I'm really excited to speak with you today.
Let's dive right in, Walter. Your career began on the tennis court, actually, before shifting into leadership in the talent space. How has the athletic background influenced the way you approach hiring and organizational culture? And I think it's important for us to understand how the job seeker can take this lesson and help them in their process.
Wow, that's a loaded question, but I'm going to try and unpack that, Bob. So, the first thing for me personally, taking the competitive nature, taking the ability to compartmentalize my life, kind of leave it at the door when you come into the office, kind of a thing, has been just so instrumental in my career in helping to build organizations, building teams. But I would say the number one thing that candidates can take from at least my experience in my sport, the sport of tennis, but it may be true in all sports, is to have a short-term memory. In tennis, it's a long match and there's hundreds of points. And when you play fantastic and you win a thrilling point, you need to forget about it within 30 seconds and get on to the next one. And at the same vein, if you play the worst point of your life and you just flub a shot and it's terrible and you're embarrassed, you need to forget it because you have 30 seconds to get ready for the next point. And to transition that to people looking for work or people looking to find a better career, maybe they're even working, you got to have that short-term memory. You didn't get that job, you bombed that interview or you did great at something, short-term memory. Let's move on. Stay professional. Don't celebrate too early. Don't celebrate until it's totally done. Don't celebrate after the interview. Celebrate after you start work and the honeymoon phase is over, and it's really turned into a great job. So that short-term memory, Bob, I think is something that everyone could use in their professional careers.
Walter, what are the biggest mistakes you see job seekers making today, and how can we avoid them?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's some massive one. When you say biggest mistake, a massive one is telling an off-color joke in an interview. I mean, that is just, horrible decision making. The biggest one that I see most people do as a mistake in their job search is to just rely on one thing to help them find a great opportunity. Like, maybe they really feel comfortable using monster.com. So they'll use that job board specifically and apply and apply and apply, not realizing that, hey, you know what? What about going to some networking events? What about using LinkedIn? What about reaching out to former colleagues? There's so many avenues where you can make the world a lot smaller and connect with tons more people. And I feel that people too often they stay in their comfort zone. Whatever they like to do, that's all they do. And it limits their possibilities. So to me, that's the mistake that I see most often.
You mentioned monster.com, and there's certainly Indeed or LinkedIn, all kinds of job boards. If someone is applying online in what is oftentimes a very crowded field, what really makes them stand out to the recruiter and the hiring manager when they're looking at all of those candidates?
That's a great question. Well, first about how about knowing your resume? Very often, a recruiter, a hiring manager, an HR professional has a candidate in the interview and they bring up something from the resume, a statistic, a line on the resume, and the candidate needs help. They need to take a look at it. They're like, wait, can I see that for a second? And knowing your resume is crucial, showing confidence, not cockiness, but showing confidence at the same time, a little humility, thrown in there. This is something, Bob, that way too many candidates are not prepared for. They should always walk in the door with at least 6 or 7 questions ready to go because at the end of the meeting, everyone always says, the interviewer always says, hey, do you have any questions for me before we go? And when you say, no, I'm good, you've answered them all, it gives a feeling of, are they interested? Maybe a little apathy or just not a well researched, well prepared candidate. So, having a list of 6 or 7 questions, chances are the interview is going to answer 3 or 4 or 5 of them, but you'll always have a couple left over to ask at the end of the meeting. I hope those couple of nuggets help a little bit, Bob.
Let's focus in on LinkedIn specifically.
Mhm.
What role do you think LinkedIn actually plays in today's recruiting, and how should the candidate optimize their profiles and presence on that platform?
Yeah, well, first of all, LinkedIn still is probably, in my experience, LinkedIn is probably the number one tool that people use. And if you're not using it, maybe check it out. And having a LinkedIn profile is not the same as using your LinkedIn profile. First of all, make sure you have a professional picture, not a picture from a party or on a boat, a good professional picture where you're professionally dressed. Let's start with that. And let's start with mirroring your resume with your LinkedIn profile. Your LinkedIn profile should be your online business card. So if you have a side business and it's on your LinkedIn profile and not on your resume, a lot of hiring managers feel, well, what else are they hiding? What else is going to be a, pop up somewhere? So try to have it mirrored and then also expand your network. Everyone in your audience, Bob, should have at least 500 first connections on LinkedIn. Why 500? Because LinkedIn stops counting after 500. So it just says you have 500 plus connections. If you happen to have 211, I mean, I'm not saying you're a bad person or a bad candidate, but it makes it seem like you're not a well networked person. And if you can get to the 500, and most people can, if they invite people from their family, friends, school, former colleagues, you can get to 500 fairly easy.
Walter, beyond resumes and keywords, what do you think it has as traits or behaviors that hiring managers consistently look for across the industries that you've been in that a candidate should make certain that they spotlight for them?
Yeah. Well, in sales, I would say it's the 2 C's, confidence and curiosity. And we could probably include that in many of the industries, many of the departments, no matter. Showing a bit of confidence is always attractive. A bit, again, not too much. It's always attractive. It makes it seem like, oh, this person they might be able to do the job that, we're looking to fill. Good communication skills, of course. And what I mean by that, Bob, is maybe you're not a good interviewee. Maybe it's not your thing. Well, you can get better. Public speaking is a thing that can be improved upon. And as we all know, it's some people's biggest phobia. So you can take a Toastmasters course and improve your public speaking. You can practice at home with your 8-year-old daughter. I mean, just let her rip. Let those, interview questions. You can go into an agency, a staffing agency, and find a recruiter and work with them on role playing, the interview so you feel comfortable because confidence is always nice to see in that seat. And then the other thing, Bob, that hiring managers consistently tell me they're looking for, yeah, they're looking for people with empathy. These days there just doesn't seem to be enough empathy going around. And again, another very attractive characteristic.
Walter, you talked about the 500 contacts on LinkedIn, which
Mhm.
really, I think, lends itself to the whole subject of networking, which for many people feels really awkward and sometimes very transactional. What's your advice on how to make it more authentic, but yet be effective for the job seeker?
Yeah, the one thing I kind of know about over my career over the last 20 years is networking and accumulating a network of people who are just readily available to help out. And it's awesome. It's such a great thing for me in my career and also personally to be able to reach out to people. My rule, my personal rule, Bob, in networking is give and you will receive. I mean, there's some corny expressions, pay it forward and everything, but I literally believe in that when you go to a networking event, you go to a conference, you're in a BNI breakfast. If you go looking to help people, genuinely help them, find out what pains them, and just look to help out. Don't look for anything in return. It will come around. So I have found that to be a genuine and rewarding. I mean, to be honest with you, many times I like to give more than I receive. It's actually more enjoyable, to help people out. But in exchange, I have a tremendous network of people who are open, ready, willing, and able to help me out.
Walter, can you give us a story from your career where someone landed a new role in some kind of surprising or creative way they got there?
Yeah, sure. Actually, it happened at the firm, the company that I'm at now, Vensure Employer Solutions, and we had a sales candidate who was just not getting the interview. He was not getting the opportunity. He just did not have the background that we were seeking. And we explained that to him. And, we said, look, if, maybe you attain that kind of experience, that would be, fantastic. And down the road, we maybe we'll have something. We're going to keep looking. Well, this guy who was very recently graduated out of college. He showed up at our RSM, the regional sales manager, that happened to be the hiring manager's title. He would show up at his office every Tuesday and Thursday, twice a week, every Tuesday and Thursday, with a cup of coffee and one donut. And he would not allow anyone to give it to the RSM except for him. So he would personally hand it to our RSM every Tuesday and Thursday. And it literally resulted in an in person interview during one of the coffee and donut visits. Long story, he's working with us right now. He got the job and he is doing excellent as a business consultant.
Walter, if you were starting your own job search today, and I hope that doesn't happen to you, but if you were,
Thank you.
what would be your first two or three moves that you would take to launch that job search?
Hmm. Yeah, great question. Bob, the first thing I would do is I would make an Excel spreadsheet. If you don't know how to use Excel, then I'd get a big yellow pad and I would put all the different ways that I know of to look for a job. You mentioned there's, ZipRecruiter and Indeed and Monster and Career Builder and, all the different job boards that you may know. I would put down in-person networking. I'd put down LinkedIn and, college fraternity, friends, whatever. So I would put my strategy and I'd put boxes with notes to put in so I could be organized, and this way, I would have the companies that I reached out to. This way, I would have the notes on how the interview went, when to follow up. It can really be daunting. And, there's that expression, Bob, that looking for a full time job is a full time job. It actually is true most of the time. So, to me, organization is something that goes out the window, and follow up to a candidate should be paramount. Unfortunately, some companies are too busy or too not caring or too disorganized to not have a good follow up system. You don't want to get lost in the sauce. So it's your responsibility as a job seeker to stay organized, communicate, follow up for your position. So those would be the few things that I would do. I would be, joining any of those sites. I'd be joining networking events, going to them, utilizing my network as much as possible, sharing the fact that, I'm looking for an opportunity. If you know of anything or know of anyone, for sure, let me know. And at the same time, Bob, what I have found is a little bit of a hidden, I'm not going to say it's a secret, but when you're a candidate and you see other candidates out there, other job seekers, help them out. Let them know where there are some openings. You just went to an interview, you didn't get it, but maybe they would be a good fit. Again, that giving part of the networking, help other job seekers out. I'm telling you, it will get paid back in spades.
Walter, you in the bio that we discussed are a champion of neurodiversity. Can you explain to our listeners what that is and what impact that has potentially on job seekers?
Yeah, sure. Bob, it's not just limited to that. I just happen to have a problem and I'm vocal about it. I have a problem with short-sighted companies who discriminate based on, it could be age. There's a lot of ageism out there. It could be race, creed, sex, color. And I've also noticed that there is a stigma attached to people whose brains work differently. And I have found that sometimes they could be the best workers out there. Just because someone is past a certain age threshold doesn't mean they don't have value to give in certain positions. Again, the neurodivergent community, they have a lot to offer. Sometimes they're hyper focused, and that could be a great job in certain accounting or finance, type positions. There's lots of value that people can provide. And I have found that too often they're not given a chance, even just to meet, just to talk, interview, to find out what they could bring to the table. And that's a shame. So yeah, I'm pretty vocal about it. And all I'm trying to do is to get companies to be just more open-minded and flexible when it comes to our society.
Walter, could you help our listeners understand what a personal brand is and how it shows up in your job seeking campaign?
Yeah, I guess the old school term, Bob, is your reputation, your rep, like the kids used to say. And now the fancy term is personal brand. And that's something, boy, that's something that, I'll be honest with you, I didn't realize how important it is. And back in the day, I did burn some bridges, and they have come back to bite me in the you know what. So, your personal brand is how you carry yourself, how people perceive you. Remember, it's very often not what you say, it's how someone receives it. So it's very important. It's not how you think you are, it's how people perceive how you are. So that is your personal brand. While you are working, you have colleagues, while you're playing pickleball on the weekends, how you present yourself is your personal brand. And I feel your personal and professional brand, I feel very often they're intertwined. And a lot of people forget, when they're playing softball on the weekends, that it has nothing to do with your professional brand. But if you think about it, out of the 20 people that are out there playing, people in the stands, the umpires, you never know who's the CEO of a company. You never know who's hiring. You never know where knowing that person or that person's perception of you might matter. So, personal brand is they give courses on how to create, protect, and make your personal brand attractive.
Walter, what's the biggest shift that you've seen in the talent market over the last 3 years or so? And what does it mean for the job seeker today if they are not aware of those shifts and deal with the changes that took place in the marketplace?
Another great question, Bob. It's been a little topsy-turvy because there's pre-COVID, post-COVID. Now we're kind of post-COVID. The job seekers seem to have a pre-COVID, the job seekers seem to have an inability or not the desire to speak up. And post-COVID, the job seekers seem to get a little more brave, which was great, by the way. If you're unhappy in a certain department, okay, bring it up. Talk to your employer about getting trained, upskilled. Talk to your employer about what your wants and needs are. So I think that was a great advancement for job seekers and employees. And now that we are years out of COVID, I think job seekers, they're tending to kind of be falling back into the less communicative ways of the pre-COVID times. And I would love it if job seekers were to come into interviews and the interview process and speak openly about their wants and needs and desires. It's important that the hiring organization understands from the beginning what you're looking for, what's going to make you happy, what's going to help you, what's going to fulfill you in your career. Because if you don't tell them, how are they supposed to know about it? So the communication lines, I feel, which opened up post COVID, are starting to close in the interview processes. And I'm hoping or sharing that candidates, job seekers, I would hope that they would open up the lines of communication even greater.
Let's get your crystal ball out for just a moment and look ahead. What do you think the skills or experiences that you believe will be needed that will define a successful candidate or employee?
Anytime, Bob, anyone talks about the future, looking, 2 years, 5, 10 years down the road, it all seems to revolve around AI. Everyone wants to talk about AI. So my theory is, or my suggestion is, that if you are looking or want to prepare, look ahead, start training yourself. Buy a book, AI for Dummies. Take a course or ask ChatGPT, hey, currently I'm a marketing manager. With AI, taking AI into consideration, what kind of training should I prepare for when AI is implemented in my company? Bob, too many people think that AI is going to take jobs. However, AI is also going to create a lot of jobs. And it's that job creation that we should all be looking for. We all want to be ready and prepared when the increased automation and increased AI dependency is there in our businesses. And if you are ignoring it or, kind of putting your head in the sand, you could be left behind. But if you prepare, you're going to be even more valuable down that road.
Walter, we've gone through so many great ideas, tips, and techniques. If our listeners remember only two or three things and they implement them Monday to help them find that next great job easier and faster, what are those two or three things?
Ugh, I can't give him like 18 or 19, Bob. I mean, two or three is tough, but I'm going to try. It's probably the first thing that I mentioned, that short-term memory. Go in, treat your job search as a job, treat it professionally. You will have highs and lows. Stay on course, and you will, if you hit all of your activity points, you hit your to-do list, you will be successful. Probably the second one, Bob, is I would say, getting out of your comfort zone and utilizing all the different ways out there today to find a job. And that includes ChatGPT or Copilot. That includes using AI and that kind of technology. Use the job boards. There's a lot of people out there, Bob, who've never worked with a recruiter at a staffing company. Why not? Sometimes they have jobs that no one else knows about. They have confidential searches that they're working on that no one knows about. It's not on the job boards. So, including those in your personal network and your friends and family, Bob, there's next to your health, of course, your health is number one. But next to that, if you are a candidate, a job seeker who wants to work and cannot find work, man, that is one of the worst things possible. It's very, very frustrating. So, I do have empathy. Most of us have not had a job at some point in their life, and we understand that it's terrible. So, the other side of it, Bob, is yeah, when we all have jobs, let's be a little nicer. Let's be a little open to the people who are looking for work. Let's see if we could just make that one introduction, get someone to shake hands who may be able to help. But those are a couple of things, Bob, that hopefully your audience takes with them.
Walter, I hope today's conversation fired up our listeners and gave them the push to take the bold steps into their own career journey. Let's start building the future you've been dreaming about. Your next chapter is waiting for you, so let's make it happen. Thank you, Walter, so much for your time and insights. We really appreciate it.
Oh, Bob, thanks for having me. I'd be happy to return. And remember, Bob, I'm the only Walter Sabrin out there on the internet. And if you have any job seekers or any people who are in their career and they want to just talk or just get some professional advice, I'd be happy to. I'm on LinkedIn and all the social media stuff. And again, the only Walter Sabrin out there. So feel free to contact me and mention Bob, and I'll pay special attention to you.
Thanks, Walter.